They took Yeshua back to the inn from which they'd come. There, in the courtyard, they released some of the nervous tension which had built up since first light. Using their bare hands and their feet, they punched and kicked him, goading him to respond. They wrapped a white sheet round him. "God Almighty!" they chanted. Then the sticks came out. 2 of them beat him methodically about the head. Others spat repeatedly in his face. Someone found a broken jar and crowned him with it, ramming the jagged edges into his scalp so that blood ran into his eyes. A giant of a man held him up while the rest, breathing heavily and leaning on their sticks, bowed and scraped and worshipped him. Then, gathering their equipment, they hauled him out again, through the gate and through the streets, to the place they had selected for his death. They moved quickly towards the centre of the city, where they seized on a man carrying a basket of vegetables, clearly in unfamiliar territory. They threw his basket into the gutter and piled him high with the wood and metal they'd been carrying. As they moved on, driving him and Yeshua between them, people silently gathered the vegetables and turned away to their homes. At the centre, in the square, amidst the places of worship where Yeshua had won so many arguments, they set up their equipment. Before they began, they offered him wine laced with salt, but he would not drink. Then they took his clothes and made an elaborate show, dragging it out, of raffling them between them. Then they began. They killed him slowly, beneath a scruffy sign which read, "God's Messenger." They found a couple of muggers and killed them too, one on each side with Yeshua in the middle. The life of the city went on around them. Those who did pause, paused to hurl abuse or exercise their wit. It seemed to be generally accepted that Yeshua had threatened to destroy the buildings around him. It now seemed unlikely that he would do so. It also seemed unlikely that he would work some miracle and be free. There were, nonetheless, many helpful suggestions along those lines to be made by those who relished a public killing. Paul and his colleagues stood in an archway, seeing it to the end together. They spent time, quietly at first, but with increasing hilarity, listing all the things Yeshua had done for other people. They exulted that he could do nothing for himself. Growing in confidence, they called for him to come and join them for a drink. Licensed by the macabre levity of the event, the muggers joined in, piling ever more extravagant insults on Yeshua and mocking their own plight. It took 3 hours for Yeshua to die. At the end, arms stretched wide, he shouted the name of God. Why have you gone?" A small man ran into a shop and came out with a bottle of vinegar. "Maybe he hasn't gone," he whispered in Yeshua's ear, forcing the upended bottle between his lips. "Maybe he'll come to save you." The last noise Yeshua made was a desolate cry. A small and frightened crowd burst out from where they'd been worshipping across the square. There'd been a fearsome crash, and plaster was falling from cracks in the walls and ceiling. One of the men who'd tortured Yeshua and watched him die threw away his blood-stained metal bar. He shook his head. "God was here," he said, to no one in particular. Of the people who'd followed Yeshua, only the women were there at the end, Martha and Maria. Joanna was there too, with a crowd of other women who'd followed him from the river to the city. They'd cared for him together, through the good times and the bad.